everyone, I'm Mims and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. I was actually in the middle of cleaning and putting away some decks and realized that I had a few decks. Oh, and I'm opening up a can of seltzer. And I realized that I had a few decks that had something a little different, or something that I had not considered when I bought all of them. But it only occurred to me more recently that there is a theme. And what I'm going to call it is decks that offer space. I've heard several people on YouTube talk about their preferences for decks, right? And we have all sorts of different ways that we have preferences. Some of them have come from our backgrounds. Some of them come with our style of reading. Some may have to do with the folks that we read for. And then, of course, there's just individual preferences. But I have heard people talk about that they didn't necessarily like eye contact or a lot of people. So all of these decks don't have people in them, but there are signs of people. And I thought that they could be, not that you would need all 5 of these, but these are just some examples, and you might find something within your collection that offers that same thing. If you have someone that you read for that's maybe not crazy about, the Rider-Waite-Smith or Tarot de Marseille or even Thoth, or maybe you read for modern audiences, but you don't necessarily have a modern taste. Like maybe you read more Tarot de Marseille, and there's probably some that would fall into that. I think all of these would still fall into the tradition of Rider-Waite-Smith, but I thought that they could offer you possibilities as both a reader, if you're reading for yourself, or reading for others. Now, I think these also could be used when you want to have a more inclusive or a more diverse offering for the people that you read for, or for yourself. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that just taking people out of the quotation or out of the equation equals a more diverse or inclusive deck. Not at all. And in fact, there's more to it than that, but it could provide a component of that. So without further ado, I have 5 decks, all of which I think have come out in the last few years, and as far as I know, I'll double check, I think all of them are still in print and they're all mass market. So this one is the most recent one to my collection, and it's the one I know the least about. I got it in a secondhand bundle, and this is the Essential Tarot by Pablo Montt. Now, this is published by Lo Scarabeo, and there's another Essential Tarot. So just keep that in mind. So I will include the names, the authors, the publication dates, and so forth of all of these decks, and I'll list them in the order that I've shown them, just in case there's something you want to find. So these are the backs. And this deck specifically, we'll get into it, but it talks about Essential Tarot is a minimalist yet decorative tarot deck based on the traditional tarot structure. It simplifies the message using as few elements as possible. The concept is to reach directly the main idea of the card. So that would be another thing, is that you're just then really dealing with the symbols. And I know I think there's a few decks where people talk about the, working more elementally. And so all of the cards in this show this sort of doorway, and then just the very basic, you have the 2 of Cups, or here you have the 5 of Swords. So it is a pip deck, but it's just a little bit different. And then let's look at some of the majors. So again, you're just looking at these archways or these doorways, and then some symbols. And I was just intrigued by it, and I thought that it would be interesting to work with. I'm going to see if there's a publication date. Let's see. I drop it. I always drop stuff in the middle of a video. Sometimes, okay, this one says copyright 2020. So again, these are all then decks that have been published in the last 5 years or so. But again, you're just looking at these archways and then a bit of color and the, you know, the words on the bottom, and then just some very basic symbolism. And again, I think one of the, you know, like I was saying earlier, I think one of the reasons why you might reach for a deck like this is if you are wanting to work elementally, or you're wanting to have something quiet and not be influenced by the facial expressions on the deck, or if that's not your taste in art and you want something more expansive that gives you the possibility to really come up with your own story and your own symbol interpretation. I think that can be one of the reasons. Or if you're coming from a Tarot de Marseille background and, you know, want some other decks, I think this, one of these decks might also work in that regard, even while it's not truly a Tarot de Marseille deck. So that's the Essential Tarot by Pablo Montt. Oh, Montt. I thought it was Monty, but it's Montt. Okay, this next one. This is one of my favorite decks. This is the Trinity Tarot by Ari Wisner. This is published by US Games, and it was originally an independent deck, and I think it came out, let me double check. I think it was published by US Games in 2024. And this one says, a beautifully concise 78 card deck that is ideal for both beginners and seasoned readers. I thought it might say something more about the symbols. I know it says it somewhere. Anyway, I like this one. For one, I like the form factor. It's quite small. Just to give you an idea, this is a typical tarot size deck. And these cards, while maybe a tad bit wider, are quite a bit shorter than, and I think sometimes having a different size or a different shape can lead to interesting readings, because or at least I feel like my brain is so used to seeing those, you know, familiar size rectangles, and so seeing something like this just gives me a little something different to think about. So again, this is similar. So those are the backs, and then this one I think is similar in some ways to that Essential Tarot, in that you've got a lot of the main symbolism, and yet very few aspects of the humans are there. The aces, you see a hand, you'll see, well, here's a good example, like the knight, you'll see the helmet, and then in the aces, you'll see a hand, and I think there's a couple where you see a, you know, like an eyeball, but it's again, it's kind of a minimalistic sort of approach. And the other thing with not seeing a lot of humans, you're also not seeing humans in peril, like in the case of that Tower card. And that might be helpful if you are new to tarot or hesitant about some of those scenes, you know, like the Judgment card or the Tower card in the Rider-Waite-Smith, and even the Tarot de Marseille. So that's the Trinity Tarot by Ari Wisner. I really like to use this as kind of like an on-the-go deck, and it works quite well because of its size. I do like to use it with a couple of smaller oracle decks. And because of its size, it works quite well for me. And this sturdy little box Yeah, this is definitely a favorite. That's the Trinity Tarot. Here's another deck by Ari Wisner. This is Transient Light Tarot. This was published by Hay House. And let's check on the date. And this one says, inspired by the beauty of transience, this powerful tarot invites you to embrace the spirit of growth and celebrate our limitless collective connection. And so this is by the same creator as the Trinity Tarot. And I do think it's interesting that so these are the backs, that they've created these two decks, of which both are, you know, mostly just the symbols and not, it's also limited color palettes. I think this one was also an indie deck. So you see you have 3 of coins there. See, here you have, but again, similar to the Trinity Tarot and even the other, the Essential Tarot, you are seeing a lot of the symbols and yet none of the humans. So I think it does give you that space. And like I said, I was kind of inspired to make this. There was someone had talked about in one of their videos, I think they were doing a decluttering, and I just don't remember who it was, but they had said something about, like, I don't like eye contact. And that kind of was in my head somewhere. And then I was putting decks away and doing some cleaning, and I had thought a little bit about it, but it was that comment that really made me think more about this particular emerging theme within my deck collection. See, like here you have the wheel. So again, very few signs of humans, and not the humans themselves. You might just see like the backpack, or, you know, a house or a church or whatever that might, you know, be. And I just thought it was kind of an interesting thing to consider. So that is Transient Light Tarot by Ari Wisner. Okay, last two. I'm going to take a sip of water and move those so I don't make a mess. Okay, last two. We have Tarot Landscapes. This came out, I think, in 2023. I've had it now for a couple of years, and it's one of my favorite decks. And in fact, it's one of those that I almost always have out. I kind of tend to choose my decks seasonally, but this is one of those that I almost always reach for. And I think I've heard somebody talk about maybe using this deck for shadow work. Oh, this is published by La Vida Press, and this is by, no, Vivita Press, sorry. And it's by Francesca Mattioni, and the illustrations are by Yoshi Mari. And so these are the backs. And you have, well, just like it says, it's all of these landscapes. For one, it's just beautiful art, and a little different than those other 3. And again, though, there's something similar to all of these. You may see signs of humans, but you don't see any humans at all. And so while it may not be an animal deck, you do see, oops, some of these are upside down. You will see some animals. I just love this color, all of the colors in this deck. And like I said, I just think it's stunning art. And it's just another approach. See, like you have this bench here. It's just another approach to what could be elemental. It could also be a way to really bring, I feel like these almost work like bringing the person you're reading for, whether it's you or someone else, that you kind of join the images. So this is Tarot Landscapes, and it's by Francesca Mattioni and Yoshimari. And it's just stunning artwork, and definitely different than the other three, where I feel like the other three have something similar in the sense of minimalism. And here you're just getting, not that the other three aren't beautiful, but these are just stunning visuals. And another way to approach that, you know, like I said, those decks that give you space or something beyond humans to consider in your readings. And then the last one is Mindscapes Tarot. This is by John A. Rice. This was another deck that was an indie deck, and I think from what I understand it was a majors deck, and then when it was going to become a Hay House deck, that's when the rest of the deck was completed. So these are the backs. So you are going to see in a few cases, I think there's a few cases where you may see humans far away, but they're still very much in they're not front and center. So here you get like a sailboat, and here you have the opening of a tent, looks like. I also think that this is really stunning and beautiful artwork. And see here, there may be a human in that image, but you kind of just get lost in the, yeah, see here you can see there's a human, but they're not, you know, up front and center. And so again, I just feel like these give you that space to tell your own story, or maybe even to feel like you're in those images. So I think in some ways this is similar to the Landscapes Tarot. Whereas the other three, I kind of felt like they had more of that, the elemental aspect and the symbolism, and then the humans were just sort of removed. Whereas these feel like big images that you could dive into in a slightly different way. Yeah, so I just thought I would share those as just a quick little piece of my collection, but also to maybe to help you think about your cards. Again, you don't need all, you wouldn't, of course you need whatever you want to, that you want in your collection, but I do like showing when I happen to have a couple of examples, because it may give you an idea of a deck that you already have, where you think, oh yeah, there is that element. Or it might help you to identify, especially if you're building your library and you're wanting decks that might work for a variety of different people, or even for yourself. You might have a specific practice that you're working on, you know, shadow work or something, where one of these decks that gives you that space might allow you to do so. Or in the case of, you know, like I said earlier, reading for others where, you know, maybe they don't recognize themselves in those images of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So I think these can give you some space for others who don't find themselves in the cards, or when you're looking to maybe do a kind of specific work. Or maybe, and I've heard people talk about how sometimes they work with animal decks, but not everybody identifies with animals. So this might be another way of reading. And they definitely give you a different way to do so. So anyway, what do you think? Do you like a deck like this where there's not a lot of human presence in the cards? I feel like lately I've been a bit sick of humans, and maybe it's what's going on in my country right now and around the world. But I feel like I am a little bit sick of humans, and I think I'm going to pull these decks up to the front and put them in my seasonal basket and just work with them and see if that might give me some sparks and some ideas for both reading and my practice. Anyway, let me know what you think, and if you have a deck that you really love using that doesn't put the humans front and center. Thanks for being here. I hope you're well and taking care of yourself and finding joy. I hope you're finding ways to take care of the earth and others in a mutual aid sense. And I hope to see you in another video. Take care.